Welcome to another episode of The Boost. I'm Pablo.
And I'm Leon.
Today we're going to be chatting about Geekdom, our experiences with Geekdom, but also some very exciting news with the state of Geekdom as well. So let's talk about Geekdom. We've been here for what, the past month?
Well, I would say December, and then with an office since March 1.
I guess you're right. I'm thinking when we actually got the office here, but we were here earlier. You're right about that.
And we've been around Geekdom since 2019 roughly.
2018.
About 2018.
Yeah. So, we were fortunate enough to be working with a number of Geekdom companies in the past, a number of companies that started here. So we've been in and around the ecosystem now for the past, effectively, 5 years.
5 years, and Geekdom's going on 9 years. Or no, sorry.
10.
I think it's longer. I think they're 13
years
old. 13 years old.
Yes.
13. I think it's 9 or 10 in this building.
In the building. Okay, that makes sense now. Yeah, it was 13. It's interesting because we keep asking ourselves, why didn't we come here from the very beginning? We've been asked that actually a couple of times. I believe Charles even asked you that question, right?
I think it was Charles, maybe John, why we never moved in earlier, why we didn't really have memberships, because we were kind of sneaking in through their door here and there. I had membership here and there, and we'd come in and work with the companies, but it never crossed our mind, or never crossed my mind to get an office here. I always wanted an office, but it never really dawned on me hey, there's actually quite affordable office space here.
Yes.
And it was a fun network, and I really liked it. I went to more of the events throughout it, but I never realized that there was a networking support system built into here. So we've become mentors pretty much at the beginning of the year.
Right.
And being the mentor, you get to work with a lot of these businesses, and Geekdom actually runs a number of programs like the Pre-Accelerator. They've got the Startup Boot Camp, which is a 3-day startup boot camp. You go in, you do the lean canvas, you do a pitch deck, and then you get feedback from these mentors. And these mentors, some of them have built businesses, exited them. Some of them are finance folks. Some of them are lawyers. Some of them are patent folks. And some of us like us are the marketers. So having that dynamic interaction with them of just talking to them and saying, hey, where are you in your business? What are your roadblocks? Right. A lot of people, very early, some folks are, in it, and they've started talking about, hey, how do I grow this? How do I market it? How do I get out of the business and work on the business? And it's always really fun to kind of talk through that and say, hey, have you thought about hiring overseas talent, nearshore talent? Or have you thought about, adopting, some sort of AI or software into your business that's there? And you can get it through trial and error, but I don't think you can really get that anywhere else. To the conversation before is, we've been doing this 5-6 years with DigiBoost, and we've sales tax, there's always problems, there's always some little hurdle, and you can do it by trial and error and crash and burn through just different parts. But having somebody tell you hey, have you thought through this, it takes you from one part of the journey to 3-4 steps along the way, and it can really accelerate growth and really change what you're doing and what you're thinking. And having access to a fractional CMO, fractional CRO for free, essentially can take you, leapfrog you 6-7 months down the line, that you don't have to worry about those things. At least.
One of the things that I've shared with a number of the mentees that I've worked with, what's really funny is people like to pigeonhole, I think both of us, right? You're marketers.
Yeah.
Right, you're marketers. No. We do marketing. That's not all we can do, and that's by design, because, if you're trying to survive on what you sell and you're trying to generate a livelihood, you learn a lot of things more than just marketing. Just looking at website management, and building a website. What's the appropriate way? I just had a conversation with a CEO recently about how they converted their website from WordPress to Webflow and all of the issues that they ran into. Now that's a technical migration. That has nothing to do with marketing. That's just a platform that someone chose, WordPress versus Webflow. What does that mean? Well, there's a process that you have to follow to do it correctly. That's not what a typical marketer would do. So, that's hard-learned lessons that, at least in our case, if someone comes to us and say, hey, we want to do this, we have a full list of best practices that you need to meet in order to do it successfully. Otherwise, you're going to pay the piper, and it's not great when your results tank.
Very true, and I also think part of it is it's not just marketing. When somebody says website, they think IT. They immediately ask, "Can you fix my computer?"
Right.
And I think when you say marketing, a lot of people are going to jump to, oh, hey, you make the brand pretty, and that's not always the case.
Sure.
It's like, hey, we handle the website, we talk about there, and then I think there's a really blurry line between sales and marketing. Like,
right.
If you don't know, they're essentially the same thing. You're selling the brand, you're selling the company, and when we're able to talk to those mentees, bypassing business process, we're able to, I'm able to talk to them about, hey, have you thought about your corporate structure? Like, hey, I don't know taxes perfectly, but if you're making $1 million a year and you're an LLC as a single member, probably not your best tax setup.
You probably should change that.
And I can guide them in the right direction. With Geekdom here, somebody's on the 8th floor, somebody's we're on the 7th, somebody's on the 6th, or somewhere around the network. I can be like, hey, I just know you're doing some things wrong on taxes. Go talk to like this person that's an expert on it,
right,
and they'll be able to help you, do that. Or even, people that are like, hey, I want to raise money, and I'm like, are you a C corp? Are you ready to take on that? Issue stocks, issue all those grants. Make sure you have a board and all that. Answer oftentimes no. They're like, I want to raise money. I want to raise $1 million. I want to raise $500,000, and I can at least tell them, hey, there's a really great finance lady, and then there's a really great finance lawyer on the floors. Go talk to them before you do any of this.
Yeah.
And we can connect them and talk to them, but that mentoring really, really helps, and having the support network so you can build like a sustainable growth plan and a sustainable business.
Yeah.
Really does. And then you become friends with folks. And
sure.
Even us with our office, we've got another gentleman in there. His name's Peter. He's building a business, Sage SEO. That all came from us doing a Google Ads workshop that then turned into a conversation about SEO and PPC and AI that then turned into a really great business collaboration that you're not going to find that at home. And
no.
And I'm a really big proponent of working from home. I really love it. I think I can focus a little bit more where I'm not distracted all the time wanting to talk to somebody or do something. But I do think there's a aspect of like networking, building those friendships, and knowing, hey, that partnership with Sage would have never occurred if we didn't step foot outside the house.
If we weren't here, right?
You can do that stuff on social media, and I do it through social media sometimes, but I think for most folks, it's a really hard barrier because you have to know somebody on social media,
right?
Or you have to have a really big following. Sure. Neither of which people often have. And
not if you're busy working.
Exactly, and maybe I should do a little bit more of that. But walking into a building, there's no social biases. There's no hey, how many followers do you have, or any of that. You can go talk to somebody, and they might be the CEO of a company, and they're going to tell you, oh, hey, like this is the stuff you should be doing. I'm like, why don't we go talk?
Right.
Excuse me. Why don't we go sit down and talk about it for a little bit? Or hey, let me introduce you to Pablo. He's got way more experience in that area or in that vertical.
Yeah.
So I think there's a friendship, a networking, and a really strong component to showing up somewhere that you can do it, especially if you're building a business. I think if you want to grow your career, learn, you have to learn from other people, or you got to do it trial by fire, and that's not a fun thing to do.
That's not fun. It's also very expensive. Those are expensive lessons that I think many, entrepreneurs can relate to, right? I mean, trying to learn essentially by drinking from the fire hose. And I think the biggest issue that I see is that, particularly in the entrepreneurial space, and I've experienced this multiple times, where you're talking to somebody about their business, they're really like keeping information tight to the chest, right? They're not really being open because they feel like they're protecting something. They're protecting the ability to compete by essentially keeping their information to themselves. And what you don't recognize is that sometimes what you think is the right approach is altogether the wrong approach. But because you're not willing to open yourself up to having those conversations, just laying bare your weaknesses, right? The thing is look, honesty in business in general is good practice overall. But I would contend to say that with entrepreneurship, it's critical. Because if you're able to find people that are willing to help, and right now, for example, at the network that we're talking about here at Geekdom, if I was looking for help, I could leave this room, go sit down with somebody within the next 5 minutes, ask a question, and probably get it answered, provided that I know who to go talk to.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've come to find is the reason the network is becoming so, open to us is primarily because we're asking the questions. We're going and talking to everybody, and we're letting them know that, hey, you know what, we don't have all the answers either. Sometimes we have to learn just by way of the opportunity that presents itself. If we don't know how to do it, you have to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna raise my hand. I don't know what I'm doing. Who here can help me figure this out?
I think that's the hard part is being open and also like vulnerable to say, hey, I don't know this. Like one of the startup boot camps, I talked to this amazing lady. She was trying to do some e-commerce stuff, printing on like a very specific type of plastic and UV printer to raise money. The very least I could tell her, hey, the PowerPoint deck was not enough. You need a little bit more to go do that. But I don't know, like e-commerce. I don't know a physical product space.
Right.
And let's go talk to the Geekdom staff and find you the right person. And I was able to get down the path and say, hey, these are the right set of people. They've actually done some of the similar stuff that you've done, and they can at least tell you, how are you going to raise money? How are you going to be able to service this? Do you need insurance for very specific types of things? But if I just said I knew all of it, she would have probably been led astray. But also the fact that she was able to say, hey, I don't know how to do this, but I know I want to do this, and I know there's a market, and she had like maybe 10 possible customers with a pretty good order, amount. And the margins were really great. It was like a 30 cents to acquire everything, 10, 15 cents to make it. And she was going to sell it like $1.15. It's like packaging for e-commerce. And I was like, this is a really great thing. You got to go find the right set of people.
Right.
And I think, the core part too of that is saying entrepreneur. Like Geekdom in the past has been a lot of tech companies, and looking out here involve the companies that are memorialized,
the Wall of Fame,
for it, and a lot of them are tech. Like there were Rackspace, there's some drone companies, all of them were quote unquote tech. And I think the part is entrepreneurship always relies on tech these days. Everything is technology based. Whether it's AI, whether it's an app, whether it's a website and with a physical presence, there's some sort of technology layer on top of it. And I think Geekdom and the larger push to help any business in any sector is going to help impact this space, because we've run into it. There's, across the office from us, a nonprofit company that's helping nonprofits. They're for profit, but the fact that they're helping nonprofits at Geekdom might not have been a thing maybe 5-6 years ago.
No.
I've run into a number of nonprofits in general, and that's really, really interesting to see, because I didn't think of that as a space. I've also run into people that have an office here and they run a brick and mortar. They just use this as a home base to do some work, to get some mentoring and all of that. So I like to see a lot more of that, because it's not just an echo chamber of the same things.
Right.
People get different sorts of experiences, and they can say, hey, I've worked in restaurants and I know how to market for them, or I know how to build out the systems for it. And you go, wow, okay. Put that in the back of your mind, turn around, if somebody says, I want to do a restaurant, which I think in the startup boot camp, there was a lady that wanted to do a mac and cheese truck.
Right.
I immediately know, okay, that is really interesting to see. You're not going to need an office in Geekdom,
right?
But you do need the network at Geekdom
for sure
to say, hey, you need to have a point of sale system. You need to have internet. What's the insurance on a truck look like?
Right.
What do the supplies look like? How do you market yourself to people? So there's a lot of shifts happening here from the state of the Geekdom that they talked about to them pushing and doing Launch SA, not acquiring it but powering it, and that's down the street at the library. There's a lot of impacts happening on entrepreneurship and businesses in San Antonio.
That's right, and I think that shift. I mean, let's be honest. What exactly, really promoted that shift? I mean, at the end of the day, it was COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
That changed things for us. I mean, talking about being now in an office, this is the first time we've been in an office since 2020. Here we are 4 years later in this community environment. And it's not just, employees for DigiBoost. It's people that are working on their own businesses. They're doing things, completely independently. And from my standpoint, I find that even more, I think, empowering, because not only are you in the middle of it all, you're seeing it happening real, it's all happening real time. And the thing is that, these are all essentially new people that were not necessarily here 3 or 4 years ago. The fact that Geekdom's now opened its focus, for more diversity in the business profile, I think has also shifted things forward quite a bit, because now, any entrepreneur, regardless of what type of business you're focused on, is able to, essentially leverage the network for growth. I mean,
yes.
that can only help San Antonio as a whole. I mean, there's no way that could possibly in any way diminish, the possibilities.
I think it's not in our notes here, but there was 92 patents.
Yes.
And those were physical patents for physical items, I believe. I think there might be some software stuff that's exponentially harder to patent, but the fact that there's patents coming out of what is an office space is really interesting to see, because normally you wouldn't have that there. And even to your point on Geekdom's impact report, 2022 to 2023, 260 startup companies were launched. And when we say startup, it's small business. It's anybody. And a lot of times a small business, maybe 1-2 people.
that hire others, right?
Yeah, they're going to hire others. They're going to create jobs. They're going to hire vendors. They're going to have an economic impact. So out of those 260, 85 are women-owned, which is 33%. 96 are minority-owned, which is 37%. And 15 of them are veteran-owned, so 6%. That's a really diverse set of that. 8 years ago, I don't think having any women-owned businesses at Geekdom would have been a thing. It was very tech-centered, and I think that barrier to entry was hard. And now that they've opened it up, I've seen women startup groups. I've seen a lot of that stuff come. So there's this openness to say, hey, everybody and anybody come. Whether whatever your background is. I've met some people that have moved here, the gentleman's across the hall, the nonprofit HQ.
Yeah.
They moved from Phoenix to come to San Antonio to reduce the cost of living and then also have a network.
Yeah.
And I think it's drawing in more people, and drawing in the knowledge, class is also going to help the city have an impact overall. There's going to be disposable income. They're also going to, be able to work from anywhere.
Yes.
They're going to be able to create jobs, and there's going to be a lot of value to that in the San Antonio and South Texas as a whole.
I think it's, probably bringing, I'd almost call it bringing San Antonio's mojo back.
Yes.
Right? I mean...
Yeah, COVID largely decimated downtown San Antonio.
Yes.
A ton of businesses closed down. Everybody that I knew worked downtown was kind of I'm working from home, or hey, we moved our offices to another part of town. It was just cheaper. The parking was less, and that really hurt it. Just even us, we let go of the offices.
Yeah. We
said no more there, and we just really returned in 2024 down here, and some hesitance for me of commuting and all of that, but. The fact that I could come interact with people is really, really fun. It's energizing, even though I'm a little bit of an introvert to
No,
some extent.
really. I'll just relay my own story. So when I moved here from Baltimore, moved here, and I think it was in officially June of 2018. And, really, I got a year and a half, right? I got to experience San Antonio in that pre-COVID environment for roughly a year and a half. And then when we went fully remote, it took not just, me away from downtown, but it created more distance between our team members. We were all working remotely. And while I'll contend we were very good at working remotely, we had to be. There's a personal connection. There's a bit of, just the organic nature of human relationships. If you're not near, the people that you work with, there's just certain things that you just don't experience together. And I think that takes away from, sometimes your commitment even. Yeah. You don't feel connected, and I feel like since we've started coming back here and doing it more regularly, having, mentor relationships here in the office, working together, on projects, meeting with clients, there's just more to be said for being able to, just getting back to the normalcy of what, what it takes to really, manage and successfully navigate business. Sometimes the ability to just get up, walk somewhere and get a question answered, is way more efficient than just sending an email and then sitting and waiting.
Yeah, and any text is tone deaf, and I think being able to see the person's reaction, being able to see their just their presence, how they're reacting. Are they, making eye contact? Are they, fidgeting? Like any of that stuff helps kind of identify, are there problems? Especially if you're working with somebody that there's a lot of tension happening.
Right.
You can sit down and kind of dispel that really quickly. Over text, you're going to escalate no matter what you do.
Right.
A phone call helps do it, but I think there's that missing part of face-to-face human interaction, going and grabbing a drink, going and grabbing lunch. Mm-hmm. And, post-COVID, for a little while, I was like, oh, remote future is here. I think there's a stat out there, and I don't remember the exact one, but it's like 2022 to 2024, remote work still a big portion. It's like 30-40%. Mm-hmm. But hybrid is starting to make an approach. And I know there's a bunch of real estate, commercial and everything. We got to figure out what remote work, what in-person work looks like. There's obviously a ton of like jobs that require you to be in person. If you're a doctor, there's no such thing as remote.
Right.
Or, if you're a restaurant owner, there's no such thing as remote. But there is these hybrid environments where you can come and meet, once, twice a month. And I think those are what's going to help. And, a lot of businesses, I do hear that of, hey, we're coming to Geekdom. They're going to be here once a month. We're going to work in person. We're going to do some workshops. We're going to do like one-on-ones, a bunch of those things that you would not want to do over remote. And I think those are the answers where you have one-on-ones, you have like client meetings, you do a lot of those human interaction points. You get a lot of tension out of the air, and then you can go collaborate and then work more efficiently remote when you are remote.
Right. Yeah. And I would even say like, look, a lot of the pushback that I see from going back to the office, from my standpoint, the companies that have large real estate footprints are big established organizations. They've probably have had years to develop different, business practices, different standards and procedures, But they
don't have it for remote. They don't really know what the remote looks like. How do you manage devices? How do you do all of that? So
sure.
There's some hurdles, and I think the part that is always like in the back of my mind is how much money do you light on fire commuting? Mm-hmm. And that's the hard part, but coming here to like a Geekdom, I'm less concerned about that ever, because I'm like, oh, hey, I got to meet with this person. I'm going to go do lunch with this person, and then I'm going to have some open hours and, hopefully do some work too.
Yeah.
But I feel like not only adding value to people, but also just that value add and that karma that you put out there. People come and send you work. They're like, hey, go work with these folks. They're really helpful. We start talking to them and we get business. And I feel like that's the part that makes it fun to kind of come here is you're going to help somebody, you're going to make an impact. You're going to also be able to have a friendship network where you can go turn to somebody and ask them, some pretty hard questions. And then at the same time, they're telling people, hey, go work with Pablo, go work with Leon, and business kind of flows in at any given time. That makes a big impact, and that would never happen remote.
Right, the referrals, absolutely.
Even the Chamber of Commerce's, like going to those things, like
sure,
you never have those referrals, and a lot of businesses are referral based, especially service-based businesses.
And it's always nice to get a referral piece of business because you did not have to spend time, effort, or energy getting it, and money, which is always very, very useful.
I guess you spent some energy.
Yeah, some energy, I suppose, but like one of the things I also noted, and mind you, I'm only like 3 miles from downtown, so it's a little different for some folks that are a little further out. But there's another benefit to something like this here in San Antonio, and that is that San Antonio does not have the traffic footprint that a lot of other cities have. Like I went to LA for spring break with the family. And, it's exactly as advertised, right? I mean, you're crawling for, 3 miles and you spend an hour doing it. I mean, look, I'm not going to say that San Antonio doesn't have the same traffic, but getting here is significantly easier from my standpoint because there are so many different avenues to get here. Yeah. Like you can go from the west side and come into downtown any myriad of ways to avoid a lot of the traffic if you're willing to drive through the city, right?
I definitely do it. My mileage out there is somewhere 25, 30 miles. Yeah. It takes me about 35 minutes to get in.
And you're in Seguin,
and like 35 minutes with no traffic, free and clear.
Right.
Maybe 30 if I'm on the highway the whole time. Mm-hmm. But nowhere else can you do that in any big city. If you're talking Chicago, if you're talking even Seattle, San Francisco, New York, LA, Miami. That same distance is substantially harder to do.
Yes.
So the commutes are easier. Get a good podcast on, and I'm in there and snap.
Right. So. Exactly. You can get some audiobooks too if absolutely need it.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, if you're a company that's considering coming into downtown, you want some office space, just a nice collaborative culture. I mean, if you haven't heard of Geekdom. We're telling you about it now. But if you have and have just thought about what are your options for moving back into the downtown space, you will not lose the per square foot fee here is really low.
Yeah, and then they also
it's
have
on
hot
purpose.
desk and dedicated desks. I think memberships with just like sitting in the 8th floor co-working spots.
Yeah.
I did that for a couple months, no problem, and I think that's like $100 a month. And then dedicated desk is like somewhere $250, $300 a month. Mm-hmm. And then offices, it can range depending on what you're doing, but much cheaper than any independent space.
Yeah.
Where you're gonna get 1,000 square feet and you're gonna be in at least $2,000 for that at least.
Yeah, of course. So anyway. I think the opportunity, for growth, the opportunity for connection is clearly here. You just have to, come down, check it out. I think at the end of the day, and if you're interested in, learning more about Geekdom, Christy and Aubrey, let's give them a shout out because they've made our transition into the community, a very, very easy one.
And they're the program managers. They help out on a lot of the programs like the 3-day startups, the accelerators, and they're just super helpful. There's also John. There's so many other Geekdom staff that I think just are here and they want to help. Like they see you, they come talk to you, ask if they need anything, even with our office, and that's really rare to have. Especially in an office, you're left to your own devices to figure everything out. But here they're like, oh no, you need better internet or this, or you need some coffee and drinks. They're going to figure it out for you.
Right.
So Aubrey, Christy, John, those are the big ones that come to mind
for sure
right off the bat.
So as far as this remainder of this year, I think there's a lot of exciting things to come. I mean, especially with the recent State of Geekdom and the Accelerate South Texas fund. I mean, you're talking about a fund worth over $1 billion that's geared toward growing entrepreneurship in South Texas.
Yeah, and extending that Geekdom footprint. Like they're Geekdom Tech Block. They're talking about cities in Mexico. I've heard El Paso mentioned. They collaborate with Capital Factory in Austin. They have another startup or another co-working spot in Dallas that they worked with. There's just so many of those little parts that the network doesn't stop just in San Antonio.
Right.
You know, it extends out, especially since San Antonio. Austin is such a growing metroplex, just like Fort Worth and Dallas. So I think you're going to see a lot more of these businesses kind of collaborate between cities and really long distances.
Yeah.
And bring together some really smart people to do some really cool businesses.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it's exciting. It's just because it's been so long.
Yes.
You know, 4 years of what we've all had to contend with. Now to see that this investment into South Texas is becoming much more. It's a reality now. You know, so if you are thinking of relocating to another city. Consider San Antonio. It's a great town, pretty close to everything, and it's really easy to get to everything, which is one of the things that I really enjoy. But in any case, if you have any questions, go to geekdom.com or just reach out to us. Come to theboost.fm. Thank you for joining another episode of The Boost, and we look forward to seeing you the next time around.
Bye.